Well, the big news yesterday, and it will continue to be so, is all of the debate surrounding the Commission of Audit. Now, the government has been urged by the Commission of Audit report to end universal health care, rein in welfare, and almost have payouts under Tony Abbott's paid parental leave scheme. Joe Hockey insists that not all of the recommendations will be implemented, but Labor says the weighty document is a blueprint for broken promises.
Towards responsible government, the long-awaited Commission of Audit.
We're not going to turn this ship around overnight, but we are going to turn it around.
More than 1,200 pages, the report shows government spending per person has tripled over 40 years, and the total spend is set to rise from $409 to $690 billion over the next decade.
The challenge now is to get on with the job of fixing the mess, and we will.
To get back to the promised surplus of 1% of GDP within 10 years will hurt, and 86 recommendations have been laid out to get there.
This is a report for government, not by government. It's up to them to make the decisions.
There are a number of recommendations that would be described as courageous.
The report recommends the end of universal health care, tripling of the Medicare levy to 3 to 3.5% for workers on $88,000 or more, unless they take out private health insurance, which would be expanded to cover GP visits. But GP visits will cost an extra $15 per visit, $5 for concession card holders, the co-payment halved after 15 visits in a year.
High income earners who could insure and look after themselves should look after themselves.
Medicines would also cost $5 more, $2 more for concession card holders if they reach the safety net limit, and pharmaceuticals would be opened up to supermarkets to increase competition. The pension age would be lifted to 70 by 2053, with eligibility tightened through a lower indexation rate of 28% of average earnings, and the family home included in the asset test if it's worth more than $500,000 for a single pensioner or $750,000 for a couple. Superannuation would also be locked up until the age of 62 and then set at 5 years below the pension age. Younger Australians would do their bit with the abolition of Family Tax Benefit B, set up to support single-income families. Family Tax Benefit A would be pared back, the maximum payout set at $49,000 and phased out above that. The audit also recommends a much less generous paid parental leave scheme, with payments capped at $29,000, $21,000 less than Tony Abbott's amended scheme.
Childcare is probably a bigger problem for women participating in the workforce than PPL.
Single, young and unemployed would get the dole for just 12 months before having payments cut unless they relocate. And growth in the minimum wage would be contained by setting a benchmark at 44% of average weekly earnings, with a different setting for each state. School education funding would be shifted entirely to the states, with a funding per student model tied to inflation. And Commonwealth funding of universities would be reduced from 59% to 45%. Student fees would rise and universities would be free to set them. Industry assistance would be abolished for the car industry, ethanol, and Tony Abbott's Cadbury factory fund also gets a special mention, while funds would be reduced for Screen Australia and Landcare. And Tourism Australia would see funding halved, money for Austrade reduced, and government assets sold off: Snowy Hydro, Australia Post, the Mint, and in the long term, the NBN. 73 government bodies would be abolished or merged, and staffing significantly reduced. The ABC and SBS would have funding benchmarked against each other, and commercial networks, the Australia Network, would be abolished. There'd also be a major streamlining of duplication in the Federation, with the Commonwealth to hand back key responsibilities to the states, and the states given a big bite out of the income tax base to help pay for it. GST funding for the states would be distributed on a per capita basis, with special grants to ensure no state is worse off in the future. None of the recommendations have been ruled out publicly, though many are clearly politically impossible at this time. The most controversial budget nasty, a debt tax, isn't in the report. Nonetheless, it's been all but confirmed, despite the broken promise label.
Please, this idea somehow that everything we have ever said is going to be held against what has moved on us, because the previous government basically misled the Australian people about the state of the budget, is kind of ridiculous.
This report is a blueprint for Tony Abbott's broken promises. This is a report written by big business, for big business, which hurts ordinary families.
The budget will be handed down on Tuesday week. David Lipson, Sky News, Canberra.